All right, Sloshay Tovarish. I'm going to quickly run through this presentation. This is a presentation given by Callum some time ago, but it goes over the current ARIA service makeup and which should give you a nice overview of how things are actually put together. So this is a rough diagram giving you the service makeup as it currently stands. What we have currently is we have a gateway server, and this does the routing to the various containers, and passes various header flags with HA proxy. We have the ARIA IDSS, which is a slightly customized version of Keycloak, and this provides the identity services used within ARIA, or at least in the new world ARIA, and hopefully by the time you're using this, the SAML service is long gone. So this is based on OpenID Connect. So internally, everything is using OpenID Connect tokens to identify users. And we have a number of microservices. We have various microservices written in Fay, which is essentially a wrapper around Symfony. And this is currently the site data API, the organizational API, and the user data API, of which the main ones are the site and user data API. And we also have ARIA Core, which is the old ARIA monolith, which is sort of 80% of what ARIA is at the moment, and we're slowly carving that up into little bits. We have each of these services exposes REST API, and this is collected via the GraphQL schema generator or GraphQL server, which is a bit of Node middleware. So when this starts up, it interrogates all of these services, gathers the schema information, and then compiles it into a coherent API interface of all these services, which is then consumed by other clients and the front-end stuff. So this is things like the profile app, the profile microservice, which is a React app which queries GraphQL. And we also have Site Builder, which you'll come on to at some point. This is again a React app, an increasingly sophisticated React app which calls GraphQL. This will eventually replace the HTML and jQuery of ARIA, and we are going to be trying to build any new sites, any new project stuff out in this, subject to our current staffing levels. All of this sits on Docker. These are all containers within Docker, and these all sit on the machine's hypervisor. And powering the back end, we have got MySQL, which is the Galera cluster, and we have an NFS server. Important to note is that currently these sit in 3 vertical stacks, or at least these bits and this bit. So each node, so there's Docker nodes 1, 2, and 3. There's database nodes 1, 2, and 3. There's only one NFS server right now, and only one Keycloak server right now. But HA proxy will route between nodes 1, 2, and 3 based on a round robin, and this is to add a little bit of redundancy into the system. So as I said, they all sit on a hypervisor, or did. Back in old world, these were our old machines. So each thing was vertically replicated into 3 nodes. So we had 3 database servers which were clustered. We had 3 web servers, which then became Docker servers. And then we had 2 gateways, if I recall. And this was on physical hardware in Struby. We've now moved into the medical science division, but we basically kept the same VM architecture. So as I said, we have the gateway. This is HA proxy configured to route round robin style into the various containers. It's configured via Ansible, via the gateway script, and this will then configure which front ends and back ends will be used. So, as you can see, a user will visit our services, and then they get routed to one of the containers based on the configuration in the gateway script. Site Builder has a container for each configuration. The ARIA containers can be shared because a lot of that configuration is done via the template that is being passed and various header flags. And it's all configured via config as code through Ansible, which we'll come on to in another lecture. So, gateway responds, forwarded to one of the nodes. So, Site Builder's first job is to understand the authentication. So it queries the identity server. We get back a token, and then this is set in the user's browser, and then from then on, the OIDC, the OpenID Connect token is passed around, and that's the thing that identifies the user in the system. So this token gets passed around to various microservices so that we all know who's who. It's stored as a cookie in the browser, or sometimes in the browser storage, so not cookie. But it's sent as a cookie as part of the bearer token. So there's a bearer token that's passed in the HTTP headers, and this is passed upstream. But a lot of the microservices are stateless, which means that each request needs the OIDC token in order to be able to authenticate. Moving on. Keycloak is the thing that powers the ARIA IDSS. We often just call it Keycloak. It links a number of different providers together and will eventually also include life science login or life science AI, depending on who you talk to. It has a custom theme, which we spent a fair amount of time doing. And then it also has a customized link to the old ARIA user database. And this allows for users to be seamlessly migrated. So if they were an old style user using the SAML login and they had their own password, they can now log into a new world system, so a Keycloak Land ARIA install, and they won't need to reset their password or anything. It will just seamlessly migrate them across, which is pretty clever, and was quite a lot of work to get working, but yeah, it works very well. So Site Builder is the new technology that we're building to provide a front end to ARIA services for projects and the like. And it's deeply tied to ARIA. So this is why we didn't, for example, use something like WordPress or anything. We developed this custom tool, and it uses the GraphQL queries extensively to store state and the like. And again, it's a fairly sophisticated tool. So Site Builder initiates an AJAX request to GraphQL. So as soon as the user hits Site Builder, the Site Builder queries GraphQL to get the page, the site, queries the site data API to get pages of the site that you're viewing. Yeah, so GraphQL is a query language developed by Facebook, and we've got a standalone service. It's a server written in Node, which compiles these schema files, these schema endpoints, which each of the services in ARIA export. And this is the thing that tells GraphQL how to define the schema. It's very sophisticated. GraphQL queries can be nested, and we can link data to each other. So it's semantically quite intelligent. It's also self-documenting to a certain extent, and it generates, the advantage to us is it generates a single endpoint that all our services can query without needing to know the ins and outs of the underlying REST APIs, without knowing which service provides which functionality. You also, like I said, get a bunch of value-added stuff like linking between schemas and linking between data. And it's also relatively self-documenting. You can embed documentation into the queries themselves. And the idea here is it provides a single endpoint, and the actual resolution of the queries, the actual querying all the REST endpoints to construct the result of that query happens within our fast data center rather than over a potentially slow internet link between the client and the server. And we randomly stop for a mean. So the GraphQL server builds the query results based on the REST endpoints, the REST APIs, and yeah, all these queries are passed a token, and this is validated against Keycloak, and this allows the new world, the microservices at least, become stateless. The monolith, the old ARIA system, still uses sessions to store state. Eventually, once we've replaced the interface with Site Builder, we would be able to do away with this. But right now, we've got a little bit of a fudge, and this becomes a little bit of a problem when so the OpenID Connect token can expire, and this expiry is different from the session expiry. So you can live in a world where the token that you need to talk to all the microservices has expired, and so has the refresh token, because maybe you had closed the tab or gone away somewhere, and the refresh token is also expired, but the session is still logged in. This will cause all kinds of weirdness. So we've got a little pop-up that happens. So when you may notice it from time to time that when you're using ARIA, you get a little pop-up prompting you to log in again. And this is because your access token has expired, but your session has not. So you have to refresh everything. Yeah, so the microservices, these are based on a library called Fay, which is a sort of wrapper around Symfony components like Doctor and Dbow. It handles the tokens nicely, or automatically exposes the GraphQL schema for the most part. Databases, so common with across ARIA is the database schema is managed in JSON. And this is then managed by an application, so updates to the schema. You don't need to run SQL queries yourself. You just run these schema generators. And yeah, permissions are handled. It does quite a lot of. It can be a little bit too clever. It's fun, but it has its own little quirks that need to be got used to. The database cluster. This is currently a Galera cluster, which is basically a clustered version of MariaDB. We have 3 nodes, so we can avoid split brain should one node go down. And yeah, it does. It's mostly ignore it and hope it works. Eventually, all of this will be moved into the cloud, and then we'll be using RDS or Aurora, I believe, is the Amazon native one, but essentially the same concept. File servers, this is currently just a simple NFS server that's mounted within the Docker nodes. This stores the files, document uploads, and user icons, that sort of thing. Again, at some point this will be replaced with something better, but right now, because of the history of why we're in the medical science division, and we had to do it in a hurry, this is what we've got. And yes, the ARIA monolith. This is an old style PHP application with jQuery and the UI on front, using sessions for state and all that bad stuff. And it exposes a schema as well, API, in a slightly more manual process. It's a little bit clunky. The authentication system, again, it does OAuth with ODC tokens. Because this code was written at a different time, while it shares some code, it's a little bit, there's some differences. So it could do with unifying these things. Because of its age, it's a mash of different PHP ideologies, but we're starting to standardize. But you'll find that the monolith is using, doesn't really use object-oriented much, in that we have classes, but it's mainly used for namespacing, proper PHP 5.4 style, and there's a lot of static functions and stuff. It is what it is, but we're slowly cutting it up and turning it into microservices. So, what something goes wrong? Well, all of these containers are logged. So logging is then shipped using FluentD, I almost said FluentDB, FluentD, to a third-party service called Chaos Search. This provides a lot of our alerting. You'll see pop up in the monitoring chat. This is something we can. It goes into a data lake, which we can then search, and it provides some monitoring and stuff. Point being is those logs are off-site and secure, meaning should we ever be compromised, we can the attacker can't tamper with the logs and cover their tracks. We get monitoring from that, as I said, and that monitoring is an ongoing process to improve. So some of the some of the monitoring isn't so great. So constantly want to do some more of our application specific monitoring, so we can get, say, alerts when the messaging email goes down or some such. Yeah, the logs are shipped to standard ARIA, and then captured, uploaded to an S3 bucket on AWS, and from then they're processed. And the other services are also logged, or should be. Mainly it's just the Docker containers, but we need to also check that MySQL and gateway logs are also captured. They should be, but again, this is an ongoing process to get this fully up to speed. And then we've got a lot of analysis from the KL Search app itself. You can run kind of queries, and you can also set conditions for monitoring alerts and the like. And that's the end of that. So hopefully that's a good overview for you folks. Have fun.